Mr. Boon. Oh my god, Ed Boon. Ed Boon. Ed Boon. Ed Boon is one of the co-creators of Mortal Kombat, and still to this day, he is the creative director at NetherRealm Studios. He was recently a part of an interview with Game Informer. It was actually live on video, but I don't think I'm allowed to show the footage, so I'm just gonna not, just to be safe. But this is what happened. The interviewer, whose name I've forgotten at this exact moment, so forgive me, sir, asked this question. Have you ever had one conversation with Marvel about making a fighting game? Ed Boon responded, yes. And that was it. And the interviewer said, what? When? And Ed Boon responded by saying, that I should probably not talk about. And I'll be honest, right now, I'm in freak out mode. I love me some fighting games. I love me some Marvel, and I love more specifically my NetherRealm fighting games. I started this channel back in the Injustice 2 days, and I couldn't be more excited because Ed Boon is just out here teasing NetherRealm/Marvel projects. What? Now let's calm down for a minute and just take a step back and evaluate all of the facts and talk about them a little bit. Ed Boon has teased Marvel stuff in the past. This is not a new thing for Ed Boon, but this is the first time we've heard about specific conversations. In the past, he's retweeted someone's concept video about a Marvel game being made by NetherRealm. He also recently, actually super recently, did a poll about future NetherRealm titles, asking about horror games, but more specifically, a Marvel vs. DC game. When the Spiderman PS4 game came out, he tweeted this video with the caption, "What if the awesome Spider-Man game was made by NetherRealm?" And then a winky face. I can't think of every instance of it, but Ed Boon has certainly teased Marvel projects in the past, or at the very least, he's been very tongue-in-cheek with the idea. But I've always been super skeptical of it. Marvel already has their connections with a fighting game company, CAPCOM, so I really just didn't see a reason for Marvel to work with NetherRealm. More specifically, I didn't see a reason for Marvel to work with DC. But in the same interview, in fact, even during the same question as what we were going over before, the interviewer asked, are you excited about that idea, referring to, of course, working with Marvel in a fighting game? And Ed Boon responded by saying, oh god, yes. We would love to make a Marvel fighting game or a Marvel versus DC game. He just threw DC in there. DC wasn't even a part of the conversation. He just threw it in. DC was not mentioned in that interview up until that point. And I'm sorry, because right now I am freaking out at the possibilities. Like I said, in the past I've been super skeptical when it comes to a Marvel NetherRealm game. It just never made sense to me logistically. It just didn't seem possible to me. But after this interview, I think it just might be possible. I think it's possible because I think this conversation's gone further than Ed Boon is letting on. He knows interviews like this will run wild across the internet with this information. And if it was just a conversation that happened between him and Marvel, and it hasn't gone any further than that, I don't think he would have mentioned it. If you imagine this type of conversation, a conversation about a Marvel fighting game between Ed Boon and Marvel as a theoretical ladder, and each step of the ladder is a more serious part of the conversation, and at the very top of the ladder is the game happening. Ed Boon just told us that he's taken the first step on that ladder. I don't think he would have told us about that first step unless he was a couple more steps up the ladder than he's letting on. But that's just speculation on my part. Please don't run wild with any conclusion I make in this video. This is purely speculation, but I have to admit, I'm very thankful for Ed Boon for being as open as he is. He's about as open as Ed Boon can be, because I'm sure he's signed a million non-disclosure agreements over the years, but yet he is still super open, and a lot of times he is just trolling. He's just a big massive troll. But this was a very direct question. Have you had conversations with Marvel about making a fighting game? And he just said yes. This video was not uploaded on April 1st. That was a genuine response from him. Like I said, I have been super skeptical in the past about a Marvel NetherRealm game. But with all the information I've laid out in this video, that interview, all of the tweets from Ed Boon in the past, theoretically pointing towards a Marvel game. Again, don't take anything away from my conclusions, don't get your hopes up, come to your own conclusions, but I actually think this Marvel game is happening. And I think it's gonna happen sooner than you might think. NetherRealm usually starts writing the story for their next game during production of the current game. So whatever the next game is for NetherRealm after Mortal Kombat 11, the storyboarding process should already be taking place. And if that's the case, they would need to know what that project is. And considering how far back these tweets go, they just might already be working, very loosely, but they just might already be working on that Marvel game. Wow. That's a lot of information to take in. If they are already working on that game, I could see the release schedule of NetherRealm games panning out quite differently than normal. It might go MK11 Marvel game, Injustice 3, or it might go MK11 Injustice 3 Marvel game, or if they do like a crossover, it could be MK11 Marvel vs. DC MK12, or it could be MK11 Injustice 3 Marvel vs. DC, then MK12. But at this point, I'm pretty confident when I say a Marvel game will probably happen in the future from NetherRealm Studios, and it could even be a Marvel vs. DC game, but I'm not holding my breath for that one, because if you look at what Ed Boon has said about this theoretical Marvel game, he always makes sure that he references Marvel vs. DC as a separate entity. So in this case, with the interview, he said, we would love to make a Marvel game, or even a Marvel vs. DC game. Obviously, on that previous Twitter poll, he mentioned Marvel vs. DC instead of Marvel. I think what's possible is that he's gone to Marvel and he's had conversations about a Marvel fighting game and potentially Marvel vs. DC, and Marvel's been quite open to doing a fighting game. Again, this is purely speculation on my part. Marvel's probably been quite open to doing a fighting game with them, but probably less open to doing Marvel versus DC. So he might just be throwing out the Marvel versus DC idea because he would like that to happen, but he just wants to see the social media reaction and maybe use that as a bargaining chip when he goes to the negotiation table. Because, you know, a lot of games happen in this industry just from one guy being like, hey, we should do this, and then a producer being like, sure. So maybe Ed Boon's done a lot of those tweets and a lot of these interviews where he mentions Marvel versus DC, so that when he goes to Marvel and he says, hey, how about we do Marvel versus DC? And then they go, no. And then he goes, well, look at all of this social media reaction. And then Marvel will go, okay, we'll do a Marvel fighting game, not a Marvel versus DC game, or something like that. Whichever way you look at it, it's nice to know that Marvel has in fact had this conversation with Ed Boon, regardless of what the context of that conversation was. Was it a conversation about a Marvel fighting game? Was it a conversation about Marvel versus DC? Was it a conversation that encompassed both topics? And I'm very curious to see where Marvel lands in there. If they did decide to work with NetherRealm, I wonder if Ed Boon would actually be able to convince them to work with DC. It would be amazing. At this point, I think all bets are off. In the past, I said that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles would never join Injustice 2 because there's too complicated of licensing issues surrounding that. They don't own the character. Injustice 2's got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I said that NetherRealm would never be able to work with Marvel because they work with DC. Here they are having conversations that Ed Boon can't talk about. At this point, I think all bets are off. I'm just going to wait and see what happens. If you're new around here, we mostly cover anime stuff, but occasionally we'll throw in other pop culture stuff like superheroes. Obviously, I started my channel with Injustice 2, and if this Marvel game from NetherRealm ever happened, you can bet I would be covering it. So again, if you are new around here, subscribing would be much appreciated. Keep up to date with future content like this. Leave a like on the video, it does help other people find it. My name has been Bilbzy, and I'll see you in the next video.